How do I find a new job? How can I make a career change? And the biggest question of all, can I really find a career that I love? Hey, my name is Jen Smith, and I believe career success doesn't have to be at the expense of living a radiantly happy and healthy lifestyle. As a former HR leader and recruiter turned career coach, I get what companies are looking for when hiring top talent. What that means for you is an unmatched combination of insider knowledge and the best kept secrets about making heart-based career changes and navigating the ups and downs of job searching in today's world of work. Whether you're a recent graduate navigating the job market for the first time or a seasoned professional ready for a career change, this show is for you. So grab your coffee or your kombucha, pull up a seat, and get ready to be challenged and inspired to move beyond your self-doubt and take the right next steps towards landing a career you love. Because you deserve a long, radiantly happy, and healthy career. This is the Flourish Careers Podcast. Hello, and welcome back to the Flourish Careers Podcast. I'm your host, Jen Smith, and I'm thrilled to have you here with me today. We are going to discuss something that comes up pretty regularly when talking with job seekers, and that is about talking about taking time off, especially when you're in the interview process. So we're going to kick off by discussing how to approach the subject of time off with a recruiter or a hiring manager during the interview process. I know this can feel tricky, but I've got you covered with some practical tips, and I'll even share a few creative ways to take time off when you're just starting a new job. Then we're going to look at some stats that highlight a bigger cultural problem when it comes to vacations. I've got some thoughts on why so many of us hesitate to fully unplug and what that means for our well-being. Then we'll get into some interesting ideas like unlimited vacation days. Sounds dreamy, but is it really? Plus, we'll touch on vacation stipends, which some companies are offering to make sure people actually take their time off. And finally, we'll wrap up by sharing a few simple ways to make space for rest, even in the busiest times. So I want to start with a fun fact. Did you know that Lin-Manuel Miranda, who is the extremely talented actor and playwright, best known for creating the musical Hamilton, and he once said, I'm going to read a quote here, "It's no accident that the best idea I ever had in my life, maybe the best one I'll ever have, came to me on vacation. The moment my brain got a rest, Hamilton walked into it." Isn't that amazing? Sometimes we think we need to keep hustling nonstop to find our next big idea or breakthrough, but Lynn's story reminds us how powerful it can be to step away and rest. When we give ourselves a break, it's often when the magic happens. So what's your version of a Hamilton moment? Have you ever had a brilliant idea show up during downtime? I think it's a pretty fun inquiry to consider. All right, so let's get into this. One of the questions I get a lot from job seekers is how to bring up planned vacation time in an interview. Bringing up time off in an interview can be awkward or anxiety-inducing for many heart-based professionals, but it doesn't have to be. In fact, with a bit of strategy and honest communication, you can address it head-on and still keep the conversation flowing positively. Now, I want to begin by normalizing something. Most of us love vacation, including the boss that's hiring you. But I get it. Bringing up your upcoming trip during an interview can feel tricky, especially when you're excited about a potential new role. So how do you let a future employer know you have a planned vacation without looking unmotivated? Now, first things first here, try to plan your job search around your vacation. Ideally, you'll want to take the trip before you get too deep into applying for new roles and into your job search. But I get it. Let's face it, life happens and the job search process is super dynamic, so you might not have that luxury, especially if an amazing opportunity comes up unexpectedly. So in that case, I recommend be upfront early in the process. In my experience, the best time to bring up your planned time off during the interview process is in the initial phone screen. At some point, the recruiter will likely ask about your availability or your timeline to start, which is your cue to mention your plans. So, for example, if they say, we're looking for someone to start in early February, and you have a trip booked, you could respond with something like, well, I'm really excited about this opportunity, but I do have a vacation planned that week. Would it be possible to start the following week? Again, in my experience, 9 times out of 10, it's not a big deal. Most companies understand that people have lives, and if they're really interested in you joining the team, they will be flexible. Now, if the recruiter doesn't bring up timing, don't hesitate to ask about the start date or even about the company's pay time off policy during your interview. So here's a couple ways to frame it. You could say, what's your ideal start date for this role? Or what type of timeline do you have in mind for when this role will start? You could also ask about how the company handles paid time off or time away from work, especially for new hires. So by doing this, you're not only showing that you're organized, but you're also gathering important information to assess whether the company aligns with your core and lifestyle values. Now, I want to mention that sometimes adjusting the start date could be a problem. So no matter how much you plan or how transparent you are, your vacation might be a deal breaker. If you're interviewing for a role that's time sensitive, for example, maybe you're a project manager and the project kicks off on March 1st and it's a big new initiative for the company, but you can't start until March 15th. That could be a problem. And there are legitimate reasons why companies might not be able to accommodate your time off. And it's important to understand those reasons and not take it personal. So there could be client commitments or product deadlines or even team dynamics that are at play. And I've seen this happen when companies have very specific onboarding processes. So maybe they only do new hire orientation once a month. And if you miss it, that could push your start date back much further than anticipated. It's always worth asking the question and understanding the company's needs, but sometimes know that the timing might not work out. Now, let's say that the timing doesn't work out and the company would like you to start sooner than later and you have that time off already planned. You might consider getting creative with your options. So one idea might be to work while you're away. I know this isn't ideal, but again, if you're really excited about a potential new role in a company, maybe you decide that you could offer to stay partially connected. Consider hopping on a conference call or two while you're away, or checking emails once or twice while you're away. Of course, this is going to be remotely, and maybe your job is on site or hybrid, or maybe it is remote, but just staying partially connected could be an option. Another option, if your trip isn't fully booked yet, you could adjust the dates to fit around the new job. So you could say something like, hey, it's my 10th wedding anniversary and we've planned a trip. I can be flexible with the dates, so how could we make this work together? The other option here is take into consideration that sometimes paid vacation is accrued. So maybe because you're a new hire, you're not going to have accrued paid time off just yet. So you could offer to take the trip or take time off without pay and say something like, I'm really excited to join the team and I'm happy to work for 2 weeks before my trip, then take my planned trip unpaid and then return and continue on working after that. So those are just some ideas to consider in conversations that you might have with a recruiter or a hiring manager. Now, of course, you definitely want to watch out for red flags. If you find the company is being really vague or dismissive about their vacation policies, or worse, they make you feel bad for bringing it up, take note of that. That is a red flag. A company that does not value time away from work might not be the right fit for a heart-based professional like you. In the end, it's about communication. Most companies understand that people take vacations, and being honest and upfront about your plans will show that you're thoughtful, organized, and proactive. If they're the right employer for you, they'll work with you to find a solution. And if not, that might be your sign to move on and enjoy your vacation guilt-free. So go ahead and bring up planned time off in your next interview with confidence. Okay, so let's switch gears to unlimited vacation days. In recent years, many companies have started making this quote unquote good faith effort to show that they recognize the importance of rest. So they've offered unlimited vacation days as part of their benefits package with the caveat of as long as you get your job done. And to be fair, it's proven a wise choice for them because many job seekers are drawn to companies that allow for unlimited vacation days. But then there's this really interesting idea that I read in an article or an interview with US News. There's a woman named Angela Tate, and she's the founder of her own consulting company. And she says, a lot of employees like the option of having unlimited paid time off, but they don't utilize it as much as you would think. And she compared unlimited paid time off to amenities at an apartment complex. So she says they're the shiny objects that draw you in, but hardly anyone uses them. And I thought that was a really interesting parallel. So what do you think? Have you ever been offered unlimited vacation days and then realized that no one uses them? Here's the problem. While the culture around work has changed in many ways, especially since the pandemic, time off is still one area that has not evolved very much. Unlimited vacation days aside, pre-pandemic statistics showed that more than half of Americans forfeited their paid time off, resulting in a staggering 768 million unused vacation days. That was just 1 year alone. Those forfeited vacation days add up to over $65 billion. That's a lot of money that's basically just being returned to an organization. Then there was a Harris poll, and this was in 2023, and it was a report about out-of-office culture, and it revealed that employees still struggle to ask for time off. It said that 83% of employees said they were happy with their employer's time off policy, but a whopping 78% don't even use all their days off. So why are we doing this? Why are we refusing to take time off? If you're like most people who skip using their PTO annually, I'm guessing you already know a few of these reasons. Some people are concerned about their workload. How am I ever going to get caught up? There's this fear of being replaceable, like I'm going to lose my job if I'm gone that much. There's anxiety around submitting a PTO request to a manager, like my boss is going to be annoyed with me. This guilt and the difficulty of taking time off leads many people to avoid taking any time away, even when we know it's essential to our overall productivity. Many employees don't use their allotted vacation days, which indicates there's an underlying issue that goes so much deeper than a company's policy. So to me, this is a culture problem, not a policy problem. So we know that time off can significantly reduce burnout and boost creativity and productivity, but no amount of time off will actually make a difference if we don't actually use it. So in that same Harris poll I mentioned earlier, 76% of workers also said they wished their employer emphasized the value of taking time off. But even with time off, their workload often remains unchanged. So to avoid returning to all those mounds of work, employees usually make the choice to put in extra hours while they're out of office. What does that look like? So in this poll, it said that 60% of the people polled admitted to struggling to disconnect from work completely. 56% of those people have taken work calls or meetings during their time off. Nearly 90% of them said they have read emails from their boss while out of the office. Working while you're off defeats the purpose. Now, I know there's a small caveat here. Some people prefer to check in a few times because it's less stressful for them. And I get that, although these are still very interesting statistics and conversation to have. No amount of PTO policies can fix the problem until the workplace culture changes around wellness and rest. So now let's talk about these vacation stipends. Could this be in the incentive that finally works? There's a CNBC article that says 10 companies realize the importance of encouraging team members to take a breather, and they offer incentives to take time off. So for example, and this is from the article, might be different at this point, but Bamboo HR offers employees $2,000 a year towards vacation expenses, like hotel rooms and airfare. Calendly, one of my favorite tools to use, grants every employee a $1,000 annual travel stipend, which can be used for hotels, flights, and transportation. And then there was a note that during the pandemic, they offered this stipend for staycation activities. Evernote offers employees $1,000 annual vacation stipend as well. I'll add this article to the show notes in case you're interested. But these companies have begun doing their part to change the company culture around rest, providing vacation stipends or travel perks on top of paid time off. And I'm not sure that this is the exact solution that we need, but it might be a step in the right direction. Okay, so if you don't yet work for a company actively encouraging you to make space for rest, there are some practical things you can do. So here are 5 ways to make space for rest. Number 1 is a mindset shift. Reframe downtime as a performance enhancer. So this perspective shifts the narrative around rest from it being a luxury to it being a necessity, which it is. Number 2 is to carve out blank space on your calendar. Try intentionally clearing your schedule for a guilt-free hour or day or even week to do nothing. Use this time to step away from everyday obligations and free up some mental space for creativity. Number 3 is to set time boundaries and prioritize your well-being. So maybe you have a rule about not checking in before or after a particular time. Creating a transition period between work time and family time can be really helpful, especially if you work from home. Number 4 is to take pauses throughout the day. I love to do this at lunchtime. I just run downstairs, grab something to eat, and just go outside and splash some sunshine on my face for a few minutes. Whether it's wintertime or summertime, a little fresh air and sunshine can go a long way. You also might consider a meditation app. I have Insight Timer on my phone, and I love just these 3 or 4 minute meditations that can really help recharge your mind before you move forward throughout the day. And then finally, take a moment to check in with yourself and assess how connected you are to your work. Do you find yourself constantly checking email on your phone, even when you're not working? What about those endless Slack notifications? Are they taking over your downtime? Maybe it's time to consider silencing them during certain hours to create more space for yourself. So those are just some ways to make space for rest that I've played around with and that have worked. So before we close out, I wanted to add a quick bonus for those of you who might not have the luxury of paid time off. So if you're an entrepreneur, freelancer, or someone working in a role where paid time off isn't guaranteed, it can be challenging to carve out time for a proper break, but it is still crucial to rest and recharge. So here's a strategy that I've used and plan to commit to for the next year. My colleague Courtney and I made a promise to each other that next year we're going to be intentional about taking 2 days off a season. So tack those 2 days onto a weekend or maybe even a long weekend holiday. So this is a great way to get a mini vacation in without having to take too much time away from your work. Just 2 days can make a world of a difference in how refreshed and recharged you feel. And one thing that I love about this plan is how good it feels to have something to look forward to every season. Knowing that you have a mini break coming up, even if it's just a few days, helps keep your motivation high. It's like a little reward that's tucked into each quarter, and having that time set aside can make a huge difference in how balanced and energized you feel throughout the year. So if you're like Courtney and me and you're ready to commit to making those extra days off happen next year, join us. Mark your calendars and let's make this the year we prioritize our well-being and give ourselves something to look forward to each season with a couple days of rest already scheduled on the calendar. Speaking of which, this is your 5 minutes to flourish call to action. Take 5 minutes to plan your time off for the next season. Seriously, pull out your calendar, pick a week, a few days, or even just a long weekend and block it off. It doesn't have to be extravagant, just something that allows you to unplug, recharge, and rest. The important thing is that you make time for it. Once it's on your calendar, commit to it. No work emails, no meetings, just time for you to reconnect with yourself and your loved ones. So to wrap up, today we covered how to talk about taking time off during a job search or an interview. We explored unlimited vacation days and vacation stipends. We talked about ways to make space for rest. Now imagine how different your work and life would feel if you embraced these benefits by simply taking a break. #nourish to flourish. Speaking of taking a break, this episode marks the end of season 6 of the Flourish Careers podcast. I'll be taking my own advice and unplugging for a bit. But don't worry, I'll be back with season 7 in the new year, refreshed, recharged, and ready to share even more stories and insights with you. As always, the notes from this episode can be found on the blog at flourish.careers/blog. Thanks again for tuning in. I'll talk to you next time.